On some level, it makes intuitive sense that both our body and spirit should be trained into maturity in Christ. So in considering the disciplines, we see that reflected. If you think about the 4 disciplines we discussed yesterday, you can probably see how this is. Study is an external activity, but the reflection happens internally. Prayer is primarily an internal conversation that may be reflected in our posture or an outward expression of that inner dialogue. Worship is intentionally manifesting our internal adoration of God in external ways. Fellowship is about human relationships, physical relationships, invested with spiritual meanings and strengthened by the bond of God's Spirit. Internal and external, training the body and the spirit to conform to a life that reflects our relationship with God. These are also reflected in a series of disciplines that we might call the letting go disciplines, where the 4 we discussed yesterday are more centered on embracing things. The disciplines we look at today are about letting go of certain things in our lives in order to find something deeper and more meaningful. In almost all cases, what we find in the practice of these particular disciplines is a deepened presence of God. Let's look at a few of them today. The first is solitude. Now, when we use the word solitude, we usually think of being absolutely alone, desolate. It's not often an appealing idea to us, but the truth of solitude as a discipline is not truly being alone. It's the embrace of the idea that God is always with us. In the same way that 2 friends might choose to go on a hike together alone, or a couple may choose to go on a private vacation to invest focused and intentional time in building their relationship. Solitude is the same for the Christian and God. Time between them and no one else. Second, we have the discipline of fasting. Something I often remind people of is that fasting is not about what you're fasting from, but what you're fasting toward. We give up something, usually food, for a period of time to embrace our reliance on God. We fast towards God and to seek His guidance in our lives, recognizing that His provision is enough for us. Third, we have simplicity. Now, this may be one of the more difficult disciplines for us to embrace in our modern day, which means it's probably one we need the most. Some people may call this discipline frugality, but I think even that is not enough of a stretch. Simplicity calls us to give up the many distractions of this world and narrow our focus. We have to ask, what am I about? And then shed the things that distract us from that. Fourth, we have sacrifice. Sacrifice is the willingness to give more than would seem reasonable in order that we might express our reliance on God, but also our commitment to His activity. Sacrifice often draws to mind giving physical goods, but in truth it can be the giving of our time, attention, and energy as well. We give perhaps more than other people think is reasonable, not because we want to impress, but because we embrace that our reliance is not on our own strength, wealth, or resources, but on the infinite abundance of our God. There are, as with the disciplines of activity, many more disciplines we could discuss here, but I believe many of these disciplines are deeply intertwined. Often practicing the one naturally leads into the other. I love you, and I pray that today you might find the time to contemplate how these disciplines might strengthen your growth and connection to God. Consider how you might personally implement these disciplines into your life. Pray that you have a wonderful day.